Thank you. Welcome to Breakout Room number 22 for EP or EIP 7732 or ePBS. Um, we're going to start with agenda item number 2. I think we're waiting for POTUS to join us. We're going to go back to agenda item number 1. But Terrence, if you wanted to speak to, I guess, the second agenda item discussing the potential shift of beacon blocked body fields like KZG commitments and execution requests from consensus layer to execution layer. I know you had some, wanted to highlight the benefits, but also flag any backwards compatibility or tech debt concerns.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Portal just joined, but let's start with number two first, then we can go to number one. And so I guess the question here is that let me give you a little background on just our rationale that in EIP 7732 ePBS, there's this notion of pipelining, which means that you're moving some stuff from the consensus side to the execution side. And then on the execution side, you have this signed execution payload signed execution payload envelope, which consists of like execution requests, KCG commitments, and those were originally on the block body, on the beacon block body. Now the question is that what do we do with those existing fields on the beacon block body that's being moved to the execution side? We could either just remove them or we could stop them with empty value, but assert them in the state. And then in the current spec that we are removing them, and therefore the generalized index is going to be different than before. It's no longer backward compatible. I haven't heard any strong pushback on this. Like if your applications, you care about this generalized index field such that you want them to stay the same, backward compatible from Flu or Electra, like please speak out. But for now, I'm just assuming that removing them is like it's basically cleaner and then it's less tap dead. And yeah, so that's basically the beacon blood body fields. And then the second item on number two is data column sidecar, right? So like in ePBS, because of we're moving all the KCG commitment to the execution side, the inclusion proof that is also different. That means that you have to create another data column sidecar with a different inclusion proof that. And that kind of lead to the questions of like, because we know the notion of consensus block will be released before the data column sidecar, you actually do not need the sign block header and also the inclusion proof in the data column sidecar. So you can actually remove those two, and then it's also much cleaner as well. So, but that requires more like eyes on it. I had the PR out on that already, but I basically have two PRs in the consensus spec report today. Sorry, I actually have one PR for this purpose. That is just renaming the data column sidecar. We remove the sign block body header, sign block header, and also the inclusion proof. So yeah, feedback welcome. Yeah, basically will. That's basically yeah. Mhm.
Great. Any thoughts on this? Yeah,
Yeah,
Mr.
Mark.
Chairman.
Um, so like I haven't had time to like fully consider this, but I will say that it seems like perhaps even another benefit of this is, as far as I can tell, the execution requests are the only thing that was in the beacon block that really required the beacon block to be signed. That and like the state root, basically.
I'm
I mean,
sorry, that required the payload to be signed?
the payload, sorry, the payload to be signed.
The
Yeah.
payload needs to be signed because it broadcasts.
Well,
Otherwise, you're DOSed.
so you can check the hash that it matches everything, and if they change anything, that would like that there are only a couple of fields that were not protected that were outside the
But
block. Everything in the block can't be changed because it's committed to by the hash.
but the CL cannot do that before rebroadcasting, right? We don't want to make this new engine API code to check the block hash, uh, or we don't want to call new payload before
Yeah.
beforehand.
So the CL already, if I mean that is true. You would have to be able to evaluate the block hash yourself on the CL side, which some CLs, including Lighthouse and Nimbus, do, because if when you're syncing, you don't send every block like a new payload. If you don't send a new payload on every block, the spec actually requires you to validate the block hash on the CL side. Because it would enable some attacks if you don't, and you're not sending every single new payload when you're syncing and waiting for the execution engine to tell you that it's valid. If you instead skip over blocks and just like send every thousandth, as I think Lighthouse does, you have to do things like verify the hash, and we have that kind of code. But this would actually require that you have the ability to verify the hash in the CL log.
And we don't.
Yeah, I mean, we do. We know Nimbus does, and it does enable you to not have to send new payload to every when you're syncing. It does enable you to like it does have that benefit that you wouldn't have to send new payload every time when you're syncing. But yeah, no, it was just something I was thinking about. But I was just pointing out that like if you move the execution request also out, then the only thing a malicious actor could really modify would be the state root. And
What do you mean the execution requests out?
if you move it out,
How are we doing that?
actually, so I thought the idea was that the execution requests are being moved to
The
the,
execution requests are not being moved anywhere. They are in the envelope. I think
oh,
the idea now, what we're discussing now is the proof of inclusion of the KCG commitments. This is in the sidecars. We
I
do
see.
not need to prove that the sidecars are actually included in the block. There's no longer a need to prove that.
Okay.
Uh,
I'll have to think about this one.
I have a question, maybe just for wrap up in my head. So removing the inclusion proof from the sidecars has a strong assumption that you assume you have already received the beacon block, right?
Yes,
Correct?
correct. So
What if,
otherwise you have to wait.
okay, so that's my point. If you don't see the beacon block and you start seeing the sidecars, what you do with gossip validation. So you have to withhold and wait for the block, and then afterwards you say, okay, we can disseminate the
Yes, or just drop them. But I think what happens is that today we have this issue because both of these things are being broadcast at the same time by the same player. But in ePBS, it does not make any sense to receive the sidecar before. It's just like receiving the payload before receiving the block. If you receive a payload before receiving the block,
yeah. I mean, in the perfect world where everything goes into in the right direction, it's okay. It's just a matter of a networking glitch that you don't see the beacon block, but you start seeing other stuff
right?
that's supposed to be. So we have to deal with in code an edge case in this case, which will be dropping those sidecars and supposed to never have ever received them. And what we do with the dissemination, we can't validate them, so we should drop and say invalid. But then we downscore the peers. So yeah, there is a kind of an edge case.
Yeah, it worries me even more for the payload. So our current behavior for the payload is kind of tricky, right? When you get a payload that refers to a beacon block for the current slot, we are currently requesting that block by root. At least this is what saved us in our kurtosis runs with Teku.
Yeah.
Requesting those blocks by root. And this is dangerous to do, right? Because anyone can send you a payload for that slot and you're going to be starting making requests.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. We need to get the P2P experts to decide what is the best, what is the safest way of dealing with these things that are unexpected.
And I mean, I don't know, maybe this is already dismissed, but the ability to receive the payload before the beacon block was one of the things that at least I had theorized was a potential way if we had to apply penalties to like proposing a beacon block but not proposing the execution payload because you're doing a free option but you're self-building, then proposing the execution payload before the beacon block and allowing that to actually propagate via gossip was one of the ways I had thought that you could prevent a solo staker from suffering such a penalty. But
Self-building is never an issue because the proposer index is already expected from the beacon state. So if you receive a payload from the proposer index of the current slot, it's fine to request the block. That's not a DOS vector. The problem is if you receive a payload from an arbitrary builder, signed by an arbitrary builder for the current slot, then anyone can actually send you such a thing.
right.
And this becomes now a DOS.
Yeah.
So this hasn't ruled out potentially that mitigation if it comes to that. That's good to know.
So Alex has a question. I didn't understand. I just saw it. Could you state it, Alex? I'm not sure if you were talking about the Merkle proof or this issue now of payloads.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I wasn't following, but I thought we were talking about, okay, so I think you said that basically we don't need to have this like KZG inclusion proof in the blob sidecars anymore because of how ePBS works. But then, I mean, I think it gets back to what we were just talking about where you might get the blobs before, and then that's a DOS vector, right? Unless there's some way. So I think what just, off the top of my head, you'd want to still have some kind of proof. And I mean, yeah, the weird thing is you won't have the commitments until you get the payload.
It's a safe assumption that things are coming in the right order. Because even if you're self-proposing, you might want to send things in the right order. You don't even have time to propagate the blobs, and the beacon block needs to propagate much faster. So I think it's absolutely safe to just drop messages and ignore them instead of downscoring or anything. Just ignore messages that coming before the block.
If you're
conclusion. Yeah. Ignore if they are not in the same order, and it should be a very edge case in this standard situation.
Well, but it might not be. Like someone might be actively trying to exploit it. So, I mean, this is why we did this in the first place. So, like, if you get a blob sidecar, you should be able to prove it back to either the beacon block or the execution payload that you have, right?
That's if you have it. Like if you don't have it, right? If you don't have
the beacon, today people probably do just ignore it,
which doesn't change the behavior. That's my whole point.
Yeah.
So today what happens is that you prove it once, and now you save the signal. You need to do a verification there for the root. And since you have the header, you can do the signature verification there. And then whenever you actually receive the block, you don't need to redo that verification. But I think this is just completely in vain after ePBS. You could just assume that the block, you're going to see the block before. And if you haven't, just ignore the package before. Ignoring is not a problem on the P2P. It's not a DOS as long as it's more costly to generate the message.
Mm-hmm.
But the payload is a problem, I think.
Okay, but the payload would have a block cache, let's say, that is committed to in the beacon block, so that's fine.
Yeah, so if you see the problem is the same kind of situation. Like if you see, so let's forget about ePBS. And today you receive a beacon block whose parent you don't have, you request that parent. And we are fine doing this because we first check that the beacon block that we're receiving corresponds to a proposer that we were expecting for that slot. So not an arbitrary guy can send us this. So that's why we request the parent. But if we receive a payload, this is a problem because anyone can send us a payload.
Well, but they can't. It's signed by a builder, right?
Yeah, but any builder can do that. Builders are not expected on.
Yeah.
We're not expecting to see this particular builder sending a payload now unless we already have that beacon block. So the analog of this situation where you're requesting a parent because you don't have it doesn't really apply for payloads because we're getting a payload for an arbitrary builder. We don't have the beacon block and we cannot start requesting. And that's what we're doing now. But I think we're making a mistake. We cannot just start arbitrarily requesting the corresponding beacon block just because a builder sent us.
So you could, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but the problem is then you have to somehow cache them, then wait for the actual beacon block, or you assume that you ignore them, you drop them, you wait for the actual beacon block, and then you do a request by route. So you have to drop everything that comes before your actual beacon block. I think
you could do that. You could just block. I think I would implement a cache, a small cache. But yes, in principle, you can just drop the payload. Once you get the beacon block, request the payload by route.
Yeah, and hit a cache if you have it. At least a limited cache, you can just cache them limitedly. But this applies to the commons as well. I would do the same for blobs as well.
Yeah. That's what I think it's what we should do.
Right.
So
hate everything. Don't do any RPC before receiving the beacon block. Yeah, I kind of agree at the moment.
That's probably the pragmatic way to do this. You could also imagine the builder has to include the proposer signature.
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, like how much data is a beacon block header?
Not, it's tiny, but I think it's more we have to make sure all the like flows make sense here. But basically you would have some signifier in the execution payload, which I think the proposer signature would be a good candidate. And that would at least constrain this message space quite a bit. I mean, I think it would constrain it exactly to what we want. It's just then we're assuming builders see the beacon block before everyone else, which I don't know if that's the case.
Well, that has to be the case, right? Otherwise, the builder doesn't even know that it needs to broadcast a block.
Right. So, okay, let's think about this. So, proposer broadcasts the beacon block. The builder then must watch for that beacon block. And then basically, it would just take the signature of that message and put it onto their, what is it, the signed execution payload envelope.
Yeah,
then you would know.
It's sort of like doesn't make any sense.
It's basically like a token. Well, yeah, I don't know if it does make sense.
It sort of like doesn't make any sense to add this extra latency when it can only be added after the block has actually broadcast. I mean, I understand that this prevents a possible DOS, but I mean that DOS can happen anyways by people sending you this invalid thing, and still you're gonna do a signature verification, which is much worse than just ignoring the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I don't see how this prevents anything, because anyone that wants to send you this maliciously still is going to make you do a work, verify something.
I think at the minimum, the P2P spec needs to be updated here. That's my takeaway as an action item, that we need to include like some sort of like cache that says that we only accept the first payload from the builder based on this index or something.
No, I don't think this should be specified at all. I mean, this is just client implements however they want. We can just say ignore.
Even though the builder can send you multiple payloads that just spam you. Because today there's no.
Yeah, you could just say ignore if you haven't seen the parent beacon block.
Yeah, I would just add some security related sentences where it's a suggestion. So just ignore everything that comes before the beacon block.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So just add that. Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. I mean, stores basically say what I meant.
And DOS prevention just for that, and then all clients can just decide what to do, just like a suggestion from a security perspective.
I think that is already filtered, Alex.
No, that's not today. We don't have that. That's what I meant. We should add.
Oh, we didn't have the
we don't
on
have
the payload.
That. We don't have that on the payload.
Oh, I thought
That's
this
what
was
I meant to
added, but
add.
yeah, that needs to add certainly.
Okay,
that
sounds
needs
good.
to be added.
Okay, we're on the same
Are you
page.
sure
Yeah.
it's not? Are you sure
I
there's
just
no
checked.
one line that says it's the first message that we see from that builder for that slot?
I just checked. I don't think it's there. That's why I'm surprised.
Yeah, if it's not there, that's a bug.
I just suggested to add that. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have that. Yeah, we don't have that. Just check again.
Should we go back to agenda item 1, or you guys want to continue to ideate on this?
No, I think we are good. Okay, so I know the action item. I will do that after the call. And yeah, feel free to jump to agenda 1.
Okay. Yeah, POTUS, this is accessing post-state information like account balances, contract states, and the EVM after execution payload processing. You want to kind of tee up the details and the I think 3 trade-offs that you outlined?
Yeah, I was just looking at the P2P document to see if it was there or not. Yeah, so okay, so this is something that was raised by the Lido guys. I think it doesn't apply to them. It's not a problem to them. But the situation is the following. How does someone prove something on the EVM today about the consensus layer? Say that you want to prove that the validator, you want to act, for example, like returning money to someone that is running a validator, and you want to prove that this validator is not slashed, at least up to the previous block. The EVM has the last block root, and it gives you that by EIP-7732. That beacon block root, it's just a root, but then within the beacon block, we have a state root field, and that state root is the post state after executing that beacon block. So you can prove against that state root. You can produce a Merkle proof up to that state root, and then from that state root up to the block root. And then on the EVM, you have a proof of anything that happened on that post state. So for example, you can prove if that validator field was slashed or not. On ePBS, however, there's 2 state transitions. One is after the beacon block root has been executed, after the beacon block with that beacon block root has been executed, and then there's another state transition with a different final state root, which is after the payload has been executed. So suppose in the same situation as today, on the payload for the block at slot n+1, you want to prove if a validator was slashed or not, then you do exactly the same thing that I just said, and you would get the right answer because a validator cannot be slashed on the second state transition, which is the state transition of the payload. However, if you need to prove something that happened in the last state transition because of, for example, an execution request or something that was processed with the payload, but not at the beacon block that the EIP-4788 gives you, then you're in trouble because you cannot prove against that post-state transition because you don't have that state root anyway. You don't have a commitment to that state root. Yeah, I thought it was that we did have it. I am saying terrorists on the P2P stuff. Okay, so the question is, do we need to provide a functionality to prove this against the last beacon state transition or not? Notice that you can always prove against the parent, the previous payload transition, because the state itself has a state roots field, and the latest entry in that field is going to be the post-state transition of the latest payload before the beacon block root, with beacon block root given by 4788. So you can always prove something about either the grandparents post execution transition or about the parent post consensus transition. Now the question is, do we want to have something that proves against the parent's execution transition or not? The only thing that changes on the beacon state are because of execution requests.
Are you sure that's the only thing?
Well, currently is that, right? So we have the anything that has in the payload envelope, you only come in with execution requests, and you process the withdrawals, but the withdrawals are already pre-processed in the beacon state, but their execution requests aren't. They are only processed with the payload. I mean, it's an easy EIP to add on the execution side. You just have a new EIP that gives you the latest execution payload envelope route.
Yeah, but we also don't want scope creep. I would say to leave it alone myself, unless someone comes up and is like, this is like, you know, completely unacceptable, but it should be fine. Like even the way 4788 is designed, you have like a day of look back. So the whole point was not to have something so time sensitive that this is really going to be an issue. But I want to understand a little bit better. So basically, we're now saying for one slot, there are 2 beacon state roots. Okay.
Yes.
And these are written into the state roots field in the beacon state?
No. So the state root fields on the beacon state only has the post-state transition of the latest payload. And if there wasn't any payload, so the state roots in the beacon state doesn't change. It means that whenever you do the slot transition, you compute what was the state root at that point.
Okay, but then that's just going to be post-state roots of the beacon block, right?
Well, that's going to be post-state roots of the payload, if there was a payload, or the beacon block, if there was a beacon block, or the previous payload, if there was neither.
Okay. And so the way it works is, but you end up basically writing 2 roots. Oh, I see what you mean.
Just one. There's only one slot transition.
I see what you mean.
So basically the index, like I, corresponds to a slot, and it's the most advanced state root of that slot.
That's correct. So it keeps in the happy case, it keeps the current semantics of being after you executed the payload. I also think that we should just leave this problem alone until someone requests a fix, because the fix can come either on committing more on so the beacon block can commit to a previous state root, the EVM can commit to the execution payload envelope route, or the beacon state itself can keep track of both state transitions. The last one would be more fine, like in the sense that you can prove against either of them in a finely grained manner, but it adds a lot to the beacon state. So the last one is the only one that I would be opposed.
Yeah, I think we would just leave it alone for now.
Right. No change is a good change. Terrence, I just dropped the 2 PRs, 4525 and 4527 in the chat that you had open. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to discuss there, or if you're looking for feedback.
Not much. So yeah, I guess for 4525, that's renaming execution payload header to execution payload bit. That's people have been suggesting. And that's actually also nice because it fixes the spec test issue such that today, if the name gets overloaded, then it messes up the like client object for SSD spec vector test, and we don't know how to solve it. So this actually resolve it, which is nice. So yeah, I think that one is a no-brainer. And then the data clone sidecar was the second one to remove inclusion proof. I think that one probably needs more time, more eyes on it before we merge it. I'm not in like a rush to merge it. I think we're still fairly early on that. So yeah, but the first one we can merge it once it's ready. And I will fix the name and yeah, and make sure it's green today.
Great. I don't see Barath on the call. He had shared a HackMD I just dropped in the chat regarding some proposed changes or considerations for the Builder API. I can keep this on the agenda and we can discuss it next time if they're able to attend, or if people have thoughts on it now, we can
Yeah,
make our way through it.
he couldn't make it today. Part of this goes back to the discussion that POTOS, Terrence, and I were having on Discord around how this all fits together, say with an external builder network. I think this document can probably be iterated a bit more. So yeah, I think we're good for now.
I think
Okay.
this document though has a lot of mistakes as to how ePBS works.
Yeah, it's
I
kind of
think
my
it's
point.
possible
I
to.
think, yeah, I was working with him on this. I think we didn't understand some things, and now we do. So
We do have, I mean, and I've talked to builders before, and we never wrote it because, well, because we're waiting until the CIP was accepted. But we do have a very clear understanding of what the builder API should be, and it should not be very different to what MapBoost is now. It would be essentially exactly the same way. We should support builders' registrations because we want to send them the fee recipient to where the bid is going to be paid. We want to request the header in the exact same way that we do it now. The only difference that I think we might be forced into doing that, and I think that's really the only difference, is that we might need to sign the message to a given builder. So the validator, a proposer will need to like cache the signatures because this is going to be a different signature for each one of the builders that you're requesting directly. And I think the proposer will need to cache them before the next slot. When you find out that you're proposing next slot, you will need to start caching those requests and sign them all so that you send them signed in the next slot.
What is the rationale for including the builder index in the signed piece of data?
Because so the issue is that the auction becomes, even though it's not intentional, the auction becomes sealed. Currently, you now can track what are the bids for everyone on the relay. But if you're communicating directly with the builder,
Oh, so okay, so like if it didn't include the builder index, then the proposer could send something that they assigned to one builder and he could use that to send to another builder.
exactly. And since it's sealed, I think this is a request. I mean, it's not that it's important to me. I suspect that builders want this. And when I talk to builders, they told me yes. So I think this is something that we need to do.
So I also had some question about the spec to bring up. I don't know. Let me have a chance, but it seemed like an ambiguity to me.
This or
Yeah, it's a different.
the builder API?
It's actually the peer-to-peer spec,
Oh,
passive conditions. If you look at the one for the execution payload, the envelope, I linked it just now. Looks like the third condition, the one that says reject block passes validation. Uh, what does that mean exactly? Like,
Block there is the consensus block.
Okay. Block be the block with.
Block there is the block
I see.
that has the root of envelope beacon block root.
Okay, so
And if you have an invalid block, you do not want to sync a payload that is based on an invalid block.
all right, so it's block, not envelope. Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's.
Yeah, but coming back to the Builder API, do we want, because that's a question I think we have now, right? Do we want to scope the first DevNet with external builders, or do we want to do what we did with Teku, which is self-building, but the full ePBS thing? Because if we are going to include the Builder API on the first DevNet, then we really need to fix it now. Otherwise, this can be delayed a little bit.
Yeah, delaying seems fine. I mean, there are many changes here, so I think even just showing it works with like local self-building is a good first step, right? But yeah, I agree we should not delay on this too much because we should figure it out. But it doesn't seem like a blocker for the first DevNet.
The API itself, I think we don't want to change anything. Like we don't want to change the calls and we don't want to change the types. The only thing is that the header becomes now what was called payload envelope. What is it? Execution payload header, and now it's going to be called whatever Terence is calling it, something like bit. But the calls and everything should be the same. The only difference that I see is that we might need to sign them, and I do not know how that signature is going to be. Is it I assume it's a BLS signature.
Who needs to sign? You mean the staked builder?
No, the return is going to be a signed object. That's fine, but the question is that the proposer needs to sign the request itself. So today the proposer sends via MedBoost a request, and that request is not signed. So now the Builder API is going to be exactly the same, but the request for the header, the request for the bid, needs to come with a signature. I am the proposer index.
Proposer.
Right.
Yeah.
So the proposer needs to say, well, because you want to, the auction is sealed. So you don't want to have the builder being hit by other builders asking them what is your best bid, because the other builder will get information that is otherwise secret.
Okay.
So
like today, MedBoost doesn't work like that, and everyone seems okay with it.
Well, yeah, but today the auction is not sealed. Today I'm not allowed to contact the builder directly, right? Today,
well, the builder and the relay in either era are just the same thing. Like, let's just treat them as one entity, right?
If the builder and the relay is the same thing, then this becomes ePBS, and then other builders are trusting when they participate on that relay. But after ePBS, this gets dropped because I cannot trust that their bid in a relay is the latest good bid, because the proposer can actually be contacting this other random builder on their endpoint directly. So builders among themselves cannot trust themselves anymore.
Yeah,
I still don't see how that's different from today, because another builder could also not trust another relay, right? You're muted, but
I didn't get this.
I just don't see how it's any different. Like, this is kind of, I think, orthogonal to ePBS or not. We're just saying today it's not a sealed auction, and then what you were saying is you want it to become a sealed auction.
No, I don't mind. If we don't implement this, it's fine by me because it's less work. This is an ask from builders, and the reason is that they expect the auction to become sealed. Today, my node does not have access to a random builder. My node only has access to these 2 or 3 relays that I can put on MedBoost, and those relays are trusted by the builders. But tomorrow, my node will have access to whatever.
What are they trusted, right? Because they're still today leaking the same information that you're saying the builders want to hide.
No,
Like
the builders
we
will.
could go call relays right now and get all of the same information. Is my
Yes.
point.
But the question is, today my node cannot get on the side a bid from one of those builders because I just don't know where to even ask them. Right? And I wouldn't even trust, my node would not trust a bid on the side. It only trusts the relays. But tomorrow I can actually
Yeah.
trust a bid that comes from the side.
I don't think it matters. Like, I think the picture's the same either way. Because, like, all you can get right now is a header. And then all you would get under this change, let's say, is a header.
No. Today you just get a header. Tomorrow you're going to get a signed header. So tomorrow I can actually enforce the header.
Okay, but that doesn't change anything about any MEV you're leaking, right? Like, and that's the thing, is like, you're not actually leaking any MEV at any point in time.
No, it's not about leaking MEV. It's about leaking what is the best bid. Do we have any builders here? This is taken directly out of the Titans report. If we have a builder here, they can just describe
Yeah.
why this is
Either way.
important.
I think he's saying that today the builders like can all pull the relay and also get the information on what the auction is open today. It's not closed today, and we can make it open after ePBS just as
Or closed. Like, we can make this change and it would become
Oh.
sealed bid, and that's fine. But it's just kind of indifferent to ePBS is my only point.
Yes, with this I completely agree.
Okay.
I completely agree.
So
Yeah.
one side effect of this, which is a little more subtle, is like right now we do expect users to curate their own list of relays, but that's not been such an issue because relays don't often change that much. I don't know how often there's turnover among builders, if there's like more builders that come in and out, but if you do require it to be a sealed bid, it precludes there being a kind of relay that like you can point at where like say if you don't want to curate your own list of builders and you just want to say like I want to point at a relay that's just gonna like builders are gonna sign up to it all the time and maybe stop or whatever, come in and out, and I won't have to like curate my own list. I'll just point at a relay, it'll collect bids for me and give me the highest one. Like if you have to sign for each builder, it precludes this kind of relay from existing.
Well, so there are things you can do here. I was thinking about this some, and yeah, I don't know. Okay, so the obvious solution is that, I mean, yeah, basically the relay and builder merges. So I don't know, you could call them like meta builders or something, but basically you just need that actor that you're talking about, this aggregation actor, to be a staked builder under ePBS, and then this is fine. I think
But
for this
not
to
even that, as
work,
Terence says, it's optional. I mean, you can just send something that is not signed,
Yeah.
and that relay can trust it or not.
I was talking about something completely different, which is like a relay whose only purpose is to like do the work for you of curating builders. You get what I'm saying? So you don't have to
but you
make
could still have this, is what I'm saying. Like, there's no reason you can't have this. It's just you ultimately need a signature from a staked builder. And the question then is like, does this aggregate? Like, how does this aggregation entity that looks like a relay today? Is it the staked one and signing bids? Is it? It could probably just forward them, and that's fine. But then it just acts like a relay today.
well, I guess you could have if the builders trust that this third-party relay service isn't going to reveal the bids to any of the other builders, then I suppose you
Which they already do today.
yeah, they don't today trust they trust them, but not that they're not going to reveal bids. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this. I don't know. The FlashBots people have done a lot of research, and so they have opinions on this. I don't think I think either paradigm is fine. It's just that, yeah, it does like changes up market structure. But I've never seen anything that says, one is strictly better than the other. It's just kind of different options.
I had heard that it was good for the buyer when the auction is closed, but I am not an expert in that domain. So that could be completely wrong.
My impression here is that we don't want to make a statement about how the auction should be. Like if we can make it so that the market decides this, it's better. Instead of us making an opinionated decision on how the auctions should be.
Well, the weird thing is that can you have both an open and closed auction at the same time? What I mean is like, would you have two sets of bids, one that's private and one that's more public? Like, I don't know. I just because when you're like, well, let the market decide or let it be more like open and people will do whatever they want. It seems like once an open auction exists, it precludes having a closed auction, or maybe not. That's why I asked if they could exist at the same time. Or like,
So in the chat, sounds like there's Christopher. I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to this, but some of the sealed proposer bids or seller bids are considered to be the fairest way to go.
Fairest way. I know. I mean, as discussed before, either thing makes sense under some circumstances, and to have optionality of what auction to use would be valuable. Yes. But so intuitively, these sealed bid auctions usually use them when you fear that the bidders collude in the auction or they try to coordinate the behavior. Right.
if we have a sealed auction though too, we also are doing all this work to like add in a public gossip for the bids. So, I mean, I think the thought was
But
that
yeah. I mean, it's kind of just a different channel though, right?
Yeah, both of these things are to prevent collisions. Like if we do it sealed, that's good in the sense that it's harder for the builders to collude because it's the fact that it's sealed makes it easier to detect any kind of collusion.
Yeah, but Mark's point is we won't have sealed bids.
I
with
understand.
any-
And then
yeah.
the P2P stack that is completely open and everyone can see those
Yeah.
bids also makes it harder to have a complete collusion of builders, like sending, for example, off-protocol better bids, because we will have some builders that would only put public bids on the P2P stack.
Well, we're assuming that, but yes, assuming there are enough there to make a difference. The thing is, though,
I
imagine
already
all
talked to
builders.
Off-Chain Labs to have our own builder about this.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm just not sure what it will look like.
Oh, my own node will provide bids on the P2P stack. My own personal home node. Of course, they're not going to be competitive, but my own node will provide bids for sure.
Okay. Jumping back one point though, it seems like, so imagine all builders only use the P2P bid pool is what I've been calling it. I feel like you could still collude there, right?
What
Like
do you mean all builder? No builder will use the P2P stack. Like Titan will never send a bid over P2P.
Well, we don't know that, but sure, assume they won't.
No, we do know that. Why would they ever send a bid over P2P? I mean, they today never send a bid until the very last millisecond. Why would they change this and start bidding like 2 seconds beforehand?
To play weird games.
It's no, because
like
I can
my
take
point
it. I
is
can
just
take
you can
these are
imagine.
signed. Alex, this
Yeah.
doesn't work. These are signed. I can take them for this. So I can enforce a 2-second older bid over the P2P. This is different than today that you can start sending bids on a relay 2 seconds earlier because the relay will serve the last bid that they have. Over the P2P, whatever you sent is already signed and it's enforced. If you have a better block later, screw you anyways. The proposer can just put whatever bid they decide.
Right.
So Titan will not send bids over P2P. That's a matter of fact.
Sure. Agreed. Separately, what could happen, what I do know does happen today is, say Titan is looking at bids against BuilderNet from the relays today. They play games based on what they do know. And I'm just saying that open bids in the P2P pool gives the same sort of information. So there's a chance now for people to play games here where they could try to like trick other other builders, and yeah, like there's like attack surface here, quote unquote.
What's the attack?
I put a bid out into the world to convince other builders that I'm bidding something other than I would want to.
Again, so what is this attack? This is a signed bid. If this bid that you're putting is too high, you might be taken, and you have to produce that payload because you just bid and it's signed. It's binding. And if the bid is just too low, it's just useless information.
Well, but it's not useless, which is my point, because then maybe because of that, yeah, okay, maybe it's fine. I'd have to think about it more.
All right. Last item on the agenda is just really calling attention to, we've got a empty spec sheet for DevNet 0. I'll take a first stab at getting this loaded up and run it by the group by the next call, which is in 2 weeks on September 12th. I don't know. I guess one thing I would like some feedback on is timing or proposed schedule for when we anticipate this DevNet 0 to launch.
Maybe, sorry, just to summarize the previous discussion, we
Sure.
want them to have sealed bids in the builder API, whatever that looks like under ePBS, and then otherwise we still have open bids with the P2P layer. Okay. That was it. I don't have any views on the DevNet, but the sooner the better is probably always good.
It'd be nice to know, I guess in this order, do we want to have them like multiple clients, or is it fine if it's just a single or two clients DevNet to start with? And the second one, I mean, if we want just, if it's fine, if it's a pure Prism or pure Teku DevNet, we're gonna have one timeline, which I think it's by the end of October. If we do want to have all clients, then it's better if we know how other clients are doing.
I would say 2 minimum, because like 1 minimum is just, local DevNet anyone can do, so that doesn't add too much. 2 then is different. I wouldn't block on everyone being ready, because I think even having 2 is going to give us information that's useful. That's what my intuition would say. I mean, yeah, the other thing then is just like, okay, now that there's 2, there's now interop concerns, and that might be a whole rabbit hole of attention. But that's also kind of the whole point of doing this sooner rather than later, so seems fine. Do we have like what, Prism, Teku? Are there other clients here? I don't see anyone. Okay, I guess Lighthouse.
There's Lighthouse and there's Nimbus. No, Lodestar.
Lodestar.
And no, there's Nimbus too.
Great. So yeah, have people started looking at this?
Yeah, I mean, we're implementing, but we're quite a ways away. At the time being, I keep getting pulled onto Fusaka stuff.
Yeah,
but
Fusaka is very important.
yeah.
It's also worth mentioning that there is spec tests for the basic stuff already. So basically, as you're implementing, you can also check spec tests in the same PR just to make sure that pass. Hopefully, that will shorten some like time in terms of debugging on like multi-client setup.
But I'd like to get even from clients that are just starting to implement. It would be nice if we can just set up some branches that we can pull out of the ETH Panda Ops Docker images builders, so that we can test on kurtosis without having to bug you. Like if I can actually grab a I know that the latest ePBS Docker image from Lighthouse is going to be whatever you have latest. I can try against it without having to bug Lighthouse.
I think that's a very good idea, but it also sounds like other clients are not even in a place where they can give you that right now.
And to be honest, we will try to move away from a branch as soon as possible.
Same here. Same
And
problem with Fusaka, yeah.
and we will definitely have a kind of a blackout for a medium time period to actually start grabbing stuff and maybe rewrite portion of that thing that we have in our current branch and having a proper implementation well tested. So we will have will take some time, even if we have a kind of a current working testing branch doesn't mean that we will have soon implementation on master.
Yeah, we're in the same scenario, and we also need to change quite a bit our implementation. So we're gonna start like pulling things, and this is only going to happen after we have Fulu in our developed branch. So once we have complete Fulu on the developed branch, we can start looking into ePBS. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
You are in a worse position than us, even.
Great. I think that's all we got for today. I will try to circulate notes.
I
Yeah,
have
Mark.
a question about, I mean, Terrence brought this up, but there's something I was thinking about. So today, whether you're using a builder or not, you will have the option to self build, and generally clients will tell their EL to build a block, and then we'll compare the value of the block against the builder block, and you could in theory end up picking your own local block if it ended up being more valuable or if it didn't meet certain conditions that you can specify anyway. I expect something similar to happen in post ePBS, where you're still preparing at least to publish locally if something were to happen with your communication with the builder. And if you think through what that means, then you'd have the following order of events. You would first prepare payload to your EL. Then you need to get the block from your EL, turn it into a bid, send that bid to your validator, have your validator sign that bid. And then at slot 0 or at time 0 into the slot or whenever you would usually fetch bids, that's when you would go actually fetch bids from builders and compare against the bid that you built earlier. So it's a little funny because it necessarily means that a certain number of steps took place before you you stopped local building in order to sign and create a bid before you hit builders to stop building.
I think we do this at the same time now. So today we request a local payload at the same time that we request a header.
Okay.
So that's a point. So you start slot 0, you request a local payload from your engine, and you request headers from the external builders at the same time.
Okay, but then
So you wait for the external builders, and by the time that the external builder has returned, you compare against your payload.
so like you get your local payload. Oh, so you just compare against your payload, and in which case,
We
because
prepare the bid in parallel, but it doesn't matter. Like the question is comparing against the payload.
sure, but then let's say you take your local payload, then when your original request to the Beacon API was asking for signed bids or like a signed bid to like put into your block. No, I guess it's asking for a Beacon block. Yeah, so it's asking for a Beacon block to sign, right?
No, the what? So the engine API just asks for a payload. There's no changes on the engine API.
Validator.
Oh, the Beacon API, you mean from the validator client?
Yeah, so like the validator is going to need to request a Beacon block to sign, and the CL is going to have to pick like the best payload. And so like usually when they request the Beacon block to sign, that is when you're going to hit for builder bids. Well, if you haven't already gotten your payload from the EL, gotten an unsigned bid that you can return back to your validator to sign to then put in your beacon block to give back to your
No, the way we do this now is at the beginning of the slot, the validator client requests the bid to sign. At that time, it also requests the beacon block to sign. The beacon node handles both. The beacon node gets the payload, requests the header from the builder. The payload uses to make a bid. It sends back the bid to the validator, gets the signature from the validator, and then assembles the beacon block with whatever the best bid is.
and sends that back.
And sends back that to the validator client. The validator client signs the beacon block.
This has to be multiple requests then.
It has to be.
So this is why, like, I have been thinking, like, we know what the self-build scenario is. We know when self-building, if the proposal index and the builder index are the same, then we could maybe, if it's self-build, then just don't check the signature of the bid, such that you
let's not
lose
make
one.
it more complicated. This
You
is
just
going to make
lose
the
one.
spec more complicated just to save one signature.
But it's one beacon API request, and then it's also one, like, I think it's a much greater save there than the spec change. As someone that's implementing it,
I think I agree.
I have the same feeling. There are two in-flight requests. The beacon in flight will have to wait the other one to close and then return back. It's kind of a little bit, the design is complicated.
This all has to be driven, by the way, by the validator client, which makes it worse, even. Like, it's like
yeah, because you have to have the validator client ask for the bid before, because otherwise the beacon node doesn't know that there is a self-building in flight. Yeah.
That's my thought, because if it
unless during the preparation we also prepare giving the information to the beacon node that I am a validator who also
we are doing this for the
that already exists. Like, the beacon does know that you have an upcoming proposal, and it tells your execution engine to prepare a payload. But the point is that generally what the validator asks for is a friggin' beacon block. And if we don't require the validator to sign this thing, then it's just going to get back a beacon block. It's one request, gets back a beacon block.
It's same as today. There's no change there.
Yeah, same as that's what I'm saying. That's simple. If we do require the validator to sign, it asks for a beacon block. Somehow, either before it or during or some weird way, it has to get back an unsigned bid to sign to send back and then get the beacon block.
No. So we request the bid before. But if we do what Terence says, that self-building does not need to include a bid, we enforce that the signature, for example, is 0.
Yes.
Then you can just make this into a single request. Just request a beacon block and that's it.
It's much simpler.
It's same as today. Nothing changed.
Okay, it is a change. It is a change in the spec. We can add it. Just I would say that the signature needs to be 0 in the case of self-building.
Yeah. Because the beacon block is signed anyway. So, like, it's already dumb in this case. You're signing a little piece in the block and then outside the block.
Yeah, the change in the spec is simple. It's just I didn't want to add this extra check. But the change in the spec is just enforce that the signature in the header is 0, in the bid is 0 if it's self-building. If the if the builder index is the same as the proposer index. And in this case, the validator the validator client would only request once a beacon block, and that's it.
Which is what it does today. It's perfect.
So do you guys want to add this?
Oh, yeah.
I can add them.
Enrico, sounds good to you?
Yes. To me, I would, yeah, I don't have the details, but I feel like we're already handling explicitly the case where there is the self-building. So you're in the spec, that case is already well defined.
Right,
You're
it's-
just adding another condition there, so it's not just another thing, another situation that we have to handle. Is just a situation that is already there with just an additional constraint, which may be easier, and we save something on the VCBN communication.
Well, like the only way, because without this, it's like the simplest way to do it without this is to just have the validator client hit before, like do this in advance. You know, if you want to do it just in time, then you have to handle all the edge cases of like, you know, the builder bids arriving beforehand and like it just yeah.
My biggest complaint is not the extra code, is that beacon node has to cache that payload
Yeah,
for
the
the
cache
next
is wrong.
person. I don't like that cache.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're caching the payload and the bit. All right, so let's agree that then that the signature is 0 on the header, on the bit.
On the bid for self-building.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Seems like a productive call. Any last comments?
This is going to be in the first DevNet. So this thing will be in the first DevNet.
Yeah,
Just on the scope. Okay.
For any DevNet. I want to implement the other thing.
Yeah, no, I know, but the first DevNet is. I was going to suggest that we only do self-building. We already agreed on that too.
Oh,
So,
sure.
but with this change already included.
Yeah.
So let's wait until So let's have this PR today so that it is in Alpha 6.
Sweet.
Wonderful. Great. Well, everyone have a nice weekend, and we'll see each other in another 2 weeks on September 12th.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.